Thank you. I'm going to very much build from what Christine's been saying. I'm very lucky. I, in succession, worked for David, Estelle Morris, who's here, and Charles Clarke, all of whom were absolute enthusiasts for the direction we decided on very early on and finding the resources to get there. And it's worth saying, because it's important, and it builds on something Christine just said, the greatest single break, the reason we haven't got to where we might have expected to get 12 years ago, is that one single break has been political fear of the Daily Mail. There is no question. I wish it were funny. I wish it were a joke. It has been the extraordinary ability of the Daily Mail to fan the fears of the middle classes that somehow or other, as Christine said, that that a whole other group of people are getting uppity and that universities that no one can remember their names were actually becoming rather effective. It was that fear that held us back. We've got to plough back past that. One of the interesting things is, having been to the Daily Mail newsroom, it is one of the most sophisticated and technologically brilliantly equipped organisations in the world. So how Paul Dacre manages to square those two things in his own head is, well, it's a mystery to all of us. I was born and grew up in a period where we just used to talk about a thing called a generational gap. I would argue that that generational gap is no longer a generational gap, it's a generational gulf. And unless we come to terms with the implications of that generational gulf, we are, first of all, are putting a new brake on progress, and secondly, are not taking advantage in any way, shape or form of what's out there for us. One of the things that David did, he will remember early on, was became a fan of and promoted the idea of a thing called BET. Any of you been to BET? BET was last week, the British Educational Technology Fair. Very, very brilliant fair. It's got bigger and bigger and bigger. It's the best and most important in the world now. It's in January. At some point along the way, we decided to start introducing the international education ministers into the country to come to BET and talk to them. That's grown and grown and grown to a point where, in fact, last week, there was a marvellous dinner at the Natural History Museum. Many of the world's education ministers attended, and someone, wish it would have been me, had the brilliant idea of actually getting children from their own class, from their own countries, to talk to them. And the message from all those children was absolutely unanimous. Why aren't you allowing us to move at the speed that we believe we can move? Why are we constantly forced to learn at the pace of the slowest in the class? Why can't we use the technology that we're entirely familiar with at home in our learning and teaching processes? Same message from everyone. And I think there were a number of education ministers at that conference who were genuinely stunned by this response from, as it were, their own students. And that it really is the case. Just want to illustrate the gap that I'm talking about. Hands up in this audience, anyone that thought the events of yesterday, the inauguration of the new President of the United States, was an unfortunate occurrence? David, there were no hands went up, David. You'd not be surprised. You have all just voted for the digital future. There is no possibility that Barack Obama could have been elected as President of the United States after 4 years as a frontline politician without the entire thing being a facet of technology. It was technology that raised the money for him. It was technology that created his profile. It was technology that allowed him to talk to millions and millions and millions of young people, not just the United States, but around the world. It is technology that's created this man into a phenomena and probably the only glimmer of hope that exists on the horizon for most of us at the moment. That's technology. Now, if that isn't an effect, and if that isn't important, well, then I'm not sure that I know what is. And my biggest single concern, which I'll finish with, my biggest concern is I don't believe or I don't see that the type of imagination that's required to move Britain into the place I believe it could be exists in any of our political parties at present. I don't believe we have the political will to make the leap that Barack Obama's been able to make and actually begin to deal one-on-one with the absolutely legitimate expectations of a technologically savvy and a technologically sophisticated generation of young people.